Keegan Swenson is the 3-time defending champ here at Leadville Trail 100 MTB. Has a fantastically modified bike for this year's edition. Keegan, how are you, sir? Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Good. How you doing?
Doing great, thanks. Now, I have all sorts of questions with this bike. There's so much going on. But let's start with the obvious one. Drop bars. Last year, you not only won for the 3rd time, but set a course record on flat bars. Why make the change to drop bars?
Yeah, so I've been trying to get drop bars to work the last few years. I actually tried it for the first time back in 2022, and Myra and I tinkered around with different bars and different stems, and just I couldn't get the fit where I wanted. And I think, so it just took some time. And this year I decided so last year I was like, I'm just not going to try, just stick with the flat bars, not going to mess with it. And this year I was like, well, if I want to try and go any faster, then maybe I need to try drop bars, because I think obviously they're more aerodynamic. So I figure it's worth a go.
Sure.
And yeah, so a bit more tinkering. The new SRAM hoods, I think, made a big difference for me. The extra braking power.
It's getting a little bit longer.
Yeah, so it's like more
hand.
You can grab them easier. I can get more hands on them. Better braking. And then I was able to find a stem that worked and got me to the position that I wanted. So then tested it, and the position's perfect and the bike feels good. So it just was like a couple of years in the making in a way. But
yeah, that stem is wild. How short and how slammed it is with the top cap of the headset gone. For those who don't know, Leadville 100 is actually 105 miles, a ton of climbing. We start at 10,000 feet, 12,500 feet of elevation gain. It's sometimes joked as like, oh, it's a roadie's mountain bike course, and that it's not the most technical mountain bike.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
But there's some mountain biking. There's
For
some
sure.
fast.
That's chunky. There's some rocks and some embedded stuff, some baby heads. It's definitely not smooth. Using 2.4 tires.
Yeah. Which is a jump up from last year. You're on 2.2s, right?
2.2s. Yeah. So the first year I did actually race 2.2, and then 2.4, and then back to 2.2, and then I decided I was going to go back to 2.4s again. So
is some of that in conjunction with going with bars, and that you're giving up a little bit of control, so you want a little more?
Yeah,
girth,
definitely.
or is it just you're an old guy now and you want a little more comfort?
Bit of both. After I tested the 2.2s with the drop bars, and it was okay, but then I put the 2.4s on. I felt like I had substantially more control, along with being just more comfortable. And I think they roll better over the chunky stuff, especially being on the hardtail. So I think on a full suspension, maybe you can get away with smaller tires, but I think on the hardtail it's worth having that little extra volume, because the bike's already kind of rough. So there's a few factors.
Going to road bars, that's obviously more aero, and parts it benefits parts of the course. It benefits being aero, especially when you're off the front by yourself, right? But not all of the course is that. So how much do you feel you're giving up, if any, switching to road bars for some of the more technical parts?
Honestly, I don't think there's any penalty for them for me. I was out here a couple weeks ago and did a ton of laps on Columbine and Powerline, and I can go just as fast downhill. Like, my times are the same, if not faster in some places. I think down lower Columbine, being in the narrow, you can descend it like a road bike, get in the drops and kind of corner like you would on a drop bar road bike. And just being more aero, you accelerate faster out of the corners and stuff. So I think there's a few places where it isn't necessarily slower, but it's a little bit sketchier. You have to pay a little more attention, But I can go the same speed. So I don't think there's any penalty for me. And then, obviously when you get to the fast, flat stuff, it's substantially quicker. You don't have to worry about trying to ride the center of the bars, then go back and forth to the brakes and the shifters. Everything's obviously just right there. So
yeah, we've seen some guys running bar tape on the center of the bars.
That's what I did last year.
Yeah,
so it gives you a little cushion, a little something to hold on to there, but you still don't have brakes. You don't have a way to. I had a way to shift last year with blips underneath.
Yes.
It's the same this year.
Yes.
But you still can't brake, and then obviously the bars are sticking out still in the wind.
Right.
So I think even when you're in there, it's still not as fast as this bike. So.
Speaking of the blips and the shifters, there's all kinds of craziness going on here. One cool thing about SRAM's Axis is that buttons can be programmed to do anything. And you've got the shift levers shift, and then there's the thumb buttons can also be programmed, and then there's blips underneath can be programmed. So in addition to shifting, you've got the flight attendant SID fork. So which button does what on your cockpit?
So the wireless blips, those are just kind of a backup. If I were to crash and blow a brake out or a shifter, it's just a emergency option.
Yes.
As well as having a way to shift when I'm on the tops. So those are that, and then these I have set up so I can shift, regular. So this one, makes it easier, harder, so I can shift while I'm up in the hoods without having to, reach down and shift that big lever.
Okay.
And then both of them controls the flight attendant to throw it into a override mode or
So when you
whatever.
press both at the same time, that's the
since
flat tone.
there's no dropper and there's no big front derailleur, so I
Yes.
have it set up that way.
Yes.
So
So you've got 3 options of
yeah,
that you can toggle through.
yeah.
Is it just a matter of having it locked out for everything but the descents, or what's your
Yeah, I mean,
game
of
plan
course,
for that?
you know, there's a lot of like like I said, there's some rough stuff, so you want it fully open there. And then, the pedal mode is nice when it's like kind of like on and off chunk, or you're going kind of fast, but you're like standing up and you don't want the fork to be fully soft. And then obviously Columbine and the pavement, you want it locked out for most of it. So I'm using all the modes. Probably spend the majority of time in pedal mode,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, in that middle zone.
Yeah, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned about having a backup shifter in case something happens there. I remember at Belgian Waffle Ride, Utah,
Yeah.
one year, you got somebody got tangled up with you and managed tore your brake lever off. This was like mile 7 of a 140-mile race.
Yeah.
Most people would have stopped. Keegan won. And I was like, wow, was it sketchy not having it was a rear brake or was it a front brake?
I didn't have a front brake.
It was a front because you could still shift.
I could still shift, luckily, because because it was a 1x.
Yes.
So I was able to shift, luckily. But yeah, I didn't have a brake.
Yeah.
So actually, it was that incident that's like inspired me to always run blips on all my bikes, just as like a backup method for shifting.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think your line after the race was like, what was that sketchy? Like, I just have to brake less. And,
Yeah.
the idea is to go fast.
Yeah,
so.
skid around a little more. It got the job done. Wasn't ideal, but
Nice. Another modification, set a course record last year with a 40-tooth paired to the Eagle 1052. You stepped it up one more this year, 42. Were you spun out at all last year, or?
Yeah, I mean, I had the 10, the 40-10 spun out a fair bit last year. There's a lot of like slight fast downhill stuff here. So it was the 40-10 is like a big enough gear, but for me, it's more about like staying in good chain line. So you're kind of staying more in the middle of the cassette. And trying to avoid the 10 just because it's not super efficient, and it is it's really nice to have it, but if you can stay out of it and keep the chain more in the center, it's always better, So we were able to get the 42 on the bike. It's actually the red Explorer ring from the gravel group. So yeah, it works. It's a little heavy up some of the climbs, but luckily it works. I did a bunch of laps up there, and I think it's going to do the trick. So
A little heavy. What's total bike weight?
Oh, I just meant in terms of like it's a big gear to
Oh,
push.
it's like, I see.
It's a big gear sometimes up there. Power line especially.
Yeah.
I'll be using the 52.
Sure.
But it's a short section, so it's worth having.
Sure. So speaking of chain line, you got some new, you got the hot new wax on here. Just recently switched over to Silca. What's the secret sauce on the chain?
Yeah, just have this the Silca super secret blend chain wax. It's been great. It lasts long and it's fast. So it's just nice to have simplicity. You just throw the chain on and it's waxed and ready to go. You don't need to worry about reapplying lube or whatever. It just works. So
Yeah.
stays clean.
That's
and
why I like
save
it.
a few watts.
Yeah.
It's all a win.
Yeah. I'm just keep staring at this stem. What are the dimensions on this thing as far as length and angle? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's a 60 millimeter stem with a minus 35 angle. So it's about as low as you can get without going to the Lachlan adjustable stem.
Sure.
Which I did consider, but this one worked, so I didn't need to do that. So
Yeah. So you've been testing various iterations of this for multiple years now. Do you expect to ride this bike elsewhere, or is this the Leadville special?
I don't know. Probably just here. There's not a whole lot of races where I think I would use this bike. So, but we'll see. Maybe a race like Schwalm it could be good. But also I was pretty happy on the full suspension there. Like there's a lot of turns and it's fast, but it's not like Leadville fast. So the drop bars aren't quite as necessary, I think. So yeah, I don't know. Hard to say, but.
Do you have a goal time for tomorrow?
I don't know yet. Try and go faster,
Yeah. All right, well, good luck to you. Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you. Appreciate it.
Cleaning the rotors. They've been hotter.